Hello and welcome to Note to File, a clinical research podcast.
A collection of interviews, candid commentary, and general nonsense for the clinical research community.
Check us out at notetofilepodcast.com.
And now, without further ado, on to the show.
Hey guys, welcome to another Note to File. It's Thursday, April 23rd. How's it going, Denali?
Oh, good. It's finally starting to feel like spring here.
It's a little springy.
Little springy. We don't really get a whole lot of spring here in Wisconsin, so it's nice when that kind of does. How are you? How's your week going?
You know, rocking and rolling. We have almost the opposite. It's been like, well, that's not true because Oklahoma gets all stormy and tornado-y and what have you in the spring. So we've got some up and down weird weather.
Not at all compared to Oklahoma, obviously, because like you're gonna talk about the tornado capital of the country or whatever. But we've had 25 tornadoes so far this spring in Wisconsin, and our normal like annual volume of tornadoes is like 24. So like we're significantly above and beyond where we're at. And I think I saw something that was like, it looked at like tornado warnings, like by state. And obviously Oklahoma and like Texas were like 250, 280 or whatever. But like Wisconsin still had like high 80s, like, which is again, not super typical for us. So
amateurs.
Stormy spring.
The amateurs.
You know, at least we have basements to deal with it.
Yeah, we don't do basements here because of like we have, red dirt, which is like soft. And you can't like make basements in it, my understanding.
Well, I had this conversation with someone on my team the other day about like how like basements are not an everywhere thing. Like Tennessee doesn't have basements. The South doesn't have basements as much, I guess.
Yeah, not so much.
We
like to live on the ground, not under it. Okay.
Except for when you have a ridiculous number of tornadoes.
Well, we do have like underground shelters. Like that's pretty common. So anyways, what's up, guys? You know what? Let us know you're here in the comments. Say what's up. Give us something ridiculous to be distracted by. Today is April 23rd, and it's a lot of days again today.
Just keep adding them.
It is Army Reserve Day. No, wait, Army Reserve Birthday, apparently.
I assume that's the day that the Army Reserve was created.
We'll go with that.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently that's the case, according to this minimal information I have in front of me. It is International English Language Day. Thank God. We need a day for that.
It's like having Men's History Month.
Yeah, right. Well, today's Love Your Thighs Day. It's the London Marathon. It's Movie Theater Day. It's National Brian Day. So shout out to any Brians out there. National Cherry Cheesecake Day, National Email Day, National English Muffin Day. I can keep going.
This is getting excessive.
Pet Tech CPR Day. Come on, man. Slay a Dragon Day, apparently. Oh, today's also Spanish Language Day. So you got a twofer right there. And even more. World Table Tennis Day. It's World Book Day and World Book Night. So there's a lot of stuff to celebrate. A lot of stuff to celebrate there.
Which is your favorite
of
all of the ones you listed off?
I kind of like the Pet Tech CPR Day because it's literally so oddly specific. What about you?
I think I liked the English muffin one. I'm a big fan of Eggs Benedict. So like, made me think of that. But yeah, I'm not like vibing real hard on any of these. Seem very mid.
Well, I'm sorry you're not impressed.
Do better next time, please.
Maybe on Tuesday we'll try again.
Do better.
Hey, Jonathan Cousins, a loyal listener and friend of the show.
Yeah.
Thanks for also watching on YouTube. Again, you're an outlier. I feel like everybody watches on LinkedIn mostly.
Although a lot of viewers like post live, I feel like are more.
Yeah, LinkedIn that makes it really hard to like find stuff that's been recorded and like find it later. I think it's better live
for LinkedIn.
It's harder. Yeah. But it's harder to find it after the fact. And YouTube is obviously like easy. It's like meant to be able to find stuff. So, okay. Well, what do you want to talk about first? Actually, anything. What do you want to start with?
Well, I mean, we had like a couple of things. I mean, I think I have a question about the post you had today. And I want to dig into that because I think from a tech vendor perspective, I think it's an interesting concept where you posted about like getting some, I assume, email from Medidata about a trial EDC. Is that what they were looking at?
Yep.
So like got some notification that was like trial 70865309 whatever.
Yeah.
Log in. And I thought that was interesting because it's a weird concept where you're seeing this. It looks like Medidata is shit, right? But then it's ultimately like someone else has bought Medidata Rave.
Right.
They're the ones deploying it to you.
Right.
And I think it's interesting because Viva's in the same boat, right? Like we sell our EDC to sponsors, it gets sent to sites. And so then who's responsible for the configuration and setup of it? Right? Because did you hear, I mean, you heard something, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I got somebody email or like message me on the back end. First of all, they're like, "Oh, hey, that's what this study is," and I'm like, "I know what the study is. I'm not like
not a moron."
Like eventually, you get an email like that, and you're like, "What is this, or what could it be?" That's not even a familiar string of letters and numbers. Like the way we refer to a protocol can be through any number of different ways. So it's just more of that. Like I see it, and I'm like, "Oh well." What in God's name could this be? So I did, click go in. Of course, I had to reset my password. I haven't been in Rave for too long. Then I had to do 2-factor authentication after I got my login. Anyways, by the time I get there and I figure like, oh, okay, great. This is a, Janssen study. Fine. I know what it is. It seemed so ridiculous to me that like, that's how we're communicating like what a study is. And some sponsors are really bad about it. Like, I like AstraZeneca like as a whole, but like their protocol numbers are all so similar to each other that like it's a guessing game. So if you've got like 4 or 5 AZ studies, they're indistinguishable from each other. To me, like if all you see is the random string of letters and numbers, so it makes it very, very difficult to tell.
Well, but here's the thing that like, so from a vendor perspective, it's fascinating because we will then hear from sites who are the end users for a lot of these platforms, right? For like EDC, for example, and they'd be like, "Oh, we don't like Viva EDC. The user experience was bad, or this didn't work." And so like, then the site's like, "Oh, I don't like Viva EDC," or in this case, Brave, right? But it has nothing to do with what we as the vendor did. We sold it to sponsors and they configured it, and that's how they deployed it to the sites.
Yeah.
And so it's like you're in this weird situation where folks are like, "Oh, well, we have to fix the site user experience." But we are not in control of the site user experience always. That's whoever deployed it.
Yeah, and that's a question I asked, the guy who was kind enough to message me from Medidata. I'm like, "Hey man, like is there not some mechanism by which a vendor can keep the sponsors that are buying their software from making them look really terrible?" Because to your point, like I see that, and look, I know it's not Medidata's fault. They're not the ones who put that in there, but that's also their product, and it makes it look like shit to me. And look, I know enough, but like most of your coordinators, they don't know how this stuff all fits together and works. They're doing their jobs. They're not idiots like me on LinkedIn, trying to, figure out how this stuff works. So to your point, I think there's a very real risk of people, and I've been guilty of it too, being like, "Oh, well, this vendor sucks because they're doing this," because that's how you see it.
Right. Well, even the name, it was like, click here to log into iMedidata. And so it's like, it's all branded across the vendor. But I think to your point, like it has to be a weird balance of how you manage this, because at one level, yes, you want to have some semblance of control of your products that are out on the market, how they're being experienced, how they're being used, because ultimately that does come back to the vendors and falls back to the vendors on what is the user experience, and you end up being responsible for it, whether it was your fault or not. So should you have some control or semblance of parameters on how you're managing this? Is it through standards? Is it through locking things down? And I think there's an element of like, yes, vendors should probably do some of that where they're controlling it a little bit more, right? But at the same level, I mean, you said this was last week about like a site, your job, you're working for the sponsor, your job should be to do it how they want to do it. They're the ones paying you. And vendors are ostensibly in the same position. Like the sponsors are paying for the software. So yeah, we're going to let them do what they want. And it's a balance, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. That is a fair point. And it is tricky. And again, I've seen instances where, continuing with metadata, like I've had instances and experiences where it's great, worked awesome, set up well. And so my initial impression was like, oh, this is a great EDC. And then, a week later, I get a new study, same platform. Oh, this is what? Who did this? This is terrible. Like, this doesn't make sense. Actually, metadata sucks now. Rave is terrible. And to your point, it's got really nothing to do with the platform. But again, I have to think like there's a vested interest in like finding at least the balance. I get what you mean. Look, if a sponsor's throwing money at you to be like, here, we want to use your platform. Like, in what position are you to say like, okay, but don't use it like that?
Well,
because they're the paying customer. The customer is always right, even when the customer is an idiot.
I mean, I'm having this conversation in another, like a similar regard. Like, how much do you police the customers, right? If you're saying like, hey, we want to deploy this solution, and this particular example was like an IRO, like your organization, and they have software and they want to deploy it for the sites that they're embedded in. But if that site also runs other research with other organizations, you don't want them to have two versions of an EISF, for example. So as a vendor, we're saying, hey, you probably shouldn't. You should let them own their EISF. But then the network themselves is like, hey, no, this is the offering and services packaging we offer. And so it's at some point at the same level of where it's like, well, we're the vendor here and we can understand and we can share where there might be pitfalls in a deployment model like that.
Yeah.
But then it's also, it's not on us to police the relationship between site networks and the sites they're contracting with.
Yeah.
So it's that weird dichotomy. Like, you can see it, you can know the best, happy path, best use case, but like, ultimately, is that the role of a vendor to serve that position?
No, it's a fair question.
Mark?
And honestly, I doubt. I mean, things like this will probably have no true impact on metadata because if I'm like, hey, this stinks metadata, like they're not going to lose business or like anything just because like I complain in a nonsensical way. Yeah, and I think maybe it depends on like how intentional you are as a vendor and how hands-on you want to be versus just like, you pay me and I don't care what you do with it.
It has to be a balance, right? Because like there's market brand awareness, reputation, which is like long term. So because you have a vested interest in it, but then they're also like, I don't know, you can't either, right? Like you can't just police it all completely.
No, that's true. But this is maybe a dumb question on my part because I don't fully understand. But like, if I say I'm a sponsor, I want to use Viva's EDC, do you guys just go, cool, here it is? Or do you say, we'll help you build it? Or do you say,
oh, there's a lot of different
build it
models
for you with your input? Okay, I was going to say, so there's like a spectrum of ways that build could be accomplished. So it may be that the sponsor completely handles it on their own. It could be that Viva does it for them if they're paid to do it. And again, I'm not asking like for like specifics of Viva. I mean, like more broadly in the industry, like, are these the ways that this is accomplished?
And I think, again, I can't speak explicitly to all of the other vendors out there, but I imagine it's a very similar where you have a range of, here's the software itself, you're responsible for everything else, all the way through working together to build and support, and then through like, we're going to do it for you and deliver this for you, and you just sign off and say this is what you want.
Do they make like do EDC companies make like recommendations to the sponsors using them? Do they provide like a tool, or are they literally like, If you got a guy who knows how to do this, then you just do whatever you want.
It's a really good question. Full transparency, I don't live and play on the sponsor side of the house. I work with sites a little bit more. But they do have like a mix of offerings where it's like full on like enablement type offerings where we're going to provide you training and all the onboarding there. I mean, there's any software that is not like Microsoft Word or HubSpot or something that's like a true SaaS solution, in my mind, especially as you start getting into these solutions, like you have to have some type of services associated with it, whether that's, training, configuration, onboarding, to make it successful, because they're not like SaaS. Most of them are not true SaaS solutions in that regard. That when you start getting that complex. So like there's some semblance of services, but I imagine most folks it's a variety. Also based on like what you're looking for, because a small biotech running one trial is going to have very different needs than like a Pfizer or an Amgen or something. You know what I mean? And also what therapeutic area and what type of trial and what does the build look like and what complexities do you need in the EDC is going to be based on what type of trials you're running.
Yeah, and to your point, I would guess some of the bigger companies have like in-house folks who are experts at building these things out within the various platforms, versus a small company who's not going to have that probably in-house resource where they may have to.
That's same true with sites though, right? Like we also sell EDC to academic centers who serve as coordinating centers. And it gets down to like, do you have form builders? Do you have folks, or do you need to outsource that?
Fair. And I guess more broadly, like I guess I'd like to see a world where like some thought is going into that. Like you have to know, like if that's what you're naming your study instance or whatever. Again, I don't know the technical terminology here, but you got to know like a site's going to see that. Like, what is this? Why is it just a string of letters? Like,
yeah.
Couldn't you use some other naming convention by which it's clear what the study is or who the sponsor is or even what it is, period, at all?
Yeah, that seems just like poor.
There's a coordinator, who might have dozens of studies. What is this? What is this?
Which trial is this even for? Is it a new one? Should I even have this?
That's what happened to me. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, what is this? What could this possibly be? That's not even I've never even seen that protocol referred to with anything close to that. So is that some kind of other internal like naming convention that they're using that we're not even, again, look, at the end of the day, it's a fairly small inconvenience, not that big of a deal, but I feel like this is the kind of stuff that like happens again and again. It makes vendors that are maybe otherwise great vendors look crappy, and it's not even their fault. And I think that's just something that like maybe vendors undervalue, because if a coordinator has a bad experience using your platform, even though you didn't set it up, who are they going to hate? Probably your platform, even though because they don't know any different. They don't know any better.
And also, I mean, I think this happens so often. You can't hate the sponsor. They're the ones giving you the study and paying.
You can still hate them.
Okay.
It's a love-hate. It's love-hate.
But like the vendor, there's no loyalty. They didn't pick it. So like there's one thing if you're purchasing your own site software and you purchase SiteVault and like you have some allegiance to it because you selected it, you purchased it. There's some level of buy-in to it. But this is being pushed to me. I hate using it. There's just like full on, there's no love in the love-hate relationship there. It's just animosity.
Yeah, I suppose that's fair. Anyway, I thought it was funny. It popped up on in my inbox, and I was like, what could this possibly be? And I was like, you know what? Surely I'm not the only person this happens to, where you just have weird names for things that are not immediately clear in any way. So I just thought it would post. I didn't think it would actually get quite the traction that it did. Not as much traction as me claiming sites should be using paper. Which was really a continuation of last week's. Or even we're just going to keep going, huh? Well, I mean, clearly I'm being a little silly with it, which I don't think people maybe understand. But
that's my favorite, is when people watch it and get real up in arms and real all serious about it.
People try to get like insulting with me, like, oh, you don't know how to use technology. I'm like, dude, I'm fully everything. So like, not like I don't know how to use this stuff. I'm really just making a case that like I think it's overestimated how much true value it brings to just your sort of run-of-the-mill research site. Yeah, you start talking about big scaled research site networks where there's a lot of stuff happening remotely. Maybe yes, there's more, makes more sense. I'm not saying people shouldn't be using electronic systems, because again, I use them. So, but again, if I'm a site, I want to be as lean and efficient and spend as little investment as possible. Paper, makes sense to do paper.
So here's the deal. I was thinking about this, and I saw another unrelated post on LinkedIn earlier today. But it was about like, yes, from an efficiencies perspective, run-of-the-mill sites, like, is it there? But I also think there's more than just efficiencies that we're gaining from the electronic systems. Like, it's like, yeah, it's not it's not just efficiencies. It's about quality and consistency of data. And if you're in spreadsheets, if you're on paper, I think it's a lot easier to have transcription errors. It's a lot less auditable to figure out who's changing what. Like, so the ability to have some of that, I think, makes sense from a data cleanliness and quality perspective, as well as being able to build in like parameters of what type of data you could be putting in, which will help constrain and make sure it's.
You can put any piece of information on a piece of paper.
That's what I'm saying. That's the problem.
Why is that a problem?
So you want to be able to control blood pressure ranges. You want to be able to put in parameters of what normal values are and flag it if it sits outside of it.
I admit, like, you might need well, first of all, this is presuming most eSource is being built with edit checks in them, which I'd be curious to know how deeply programmed some eSource is, because you don't have to do it that way. You can just make it a field, just like a piece of paper. But yes, I do agree with you there. So, you might have to actually know the protocol if you're going to use paper, and to know that if you put in a, systolic blood pressure over, 140, that's going to disqualify a patient. Yes, on an electronic system, it might flag you to say, hey, stop it. Patient doesn't qualify, versus you having to just know it. But okay, then know your fucking protocol,
But I mean, it could be an error. Could you write something incorrectly in a way that's then transcribed incorrectly? Like, there's a lot more error for even just like messy handwriting, missing information, like things like that, where it's like it's going to provide some checks and balances. Again, I'm not saying this is for efficiency, but it's for data quality, and like safety and cleanliness of all of that.
And I don't necessarily, I don't disagree with that. Like, I don't know that that's such a problem. Like, we aren't screaming about data cleanliness.
Well, you aren't
generally,
but that's what true. Sponsors would need for the FDA and to make do all their analysis or whatever they need. That's the whole point, is data, right?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I could just as easily type in 101 instead of 110 into an eSource system, and it's both going to be within range. And so what difference? There's no difference.
Okay, for that specific one. But if you miss a field, it's going to flag it, say it's incomplete versus like a case report form. You could leave stuff blank and not have it there. Or you could.
And again, look, I know. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of good use cases for being electronic, and obviously, I hope people understand I'm being purposefully a little obtuse about why paper is better, because I don't believe that. Again, I use electronic systems, so I think that's sometimes lost on people. But I just want to be proven wrong.
Yeah, like
I don't still feel like
resoundingly wrong. No, and I get it.
I don't feel like it's been done in a compelling enough way for me as a small site for that to be the case. And I think there's a lot of sites like me that are not. I'm not 1 or 2 trials, but I'm not 1,000 trials. Less than 200 trials, maybe less than 100 trials most of the time. Small staff. I think that maybe more sites fit into the paper would be perfectly adequate than need a bunch of fancy electronic systems.
Well, and if we're talking eSource, I would say even, quite frankly, the large academic centers also use a significant amount of paper for eSource, because half of the information they're already documenting electronically in medical records.
Yeah.
And for them to say, great, it's here, I have to put it in the eSource, augment that with direct data, and then put it into an EDC. Like, it does not make sense for that. Like, you're transcribing it in the health record, in the eSource with the other data, and then into EDC. So unless like that, a lot of them still use paper from a source perspective on the other data.
Well, and that's the other interesting thing I get when I have these conversations is like I kind of get both. I get opinions that seem to state both things. Some people are like, well, no one's using paper anymore. And then people are like, well, 60% of sites are still using paper. And I'm like, well, okay, somebody's wrong. It can't be both things. I mean, suspect there's a lot more paper being used than what people believe. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Again, I've been electronic for a while now. So
and I also think too, it's like dependent on what we're talking about and what folks are using paper for. Because I think probably total assumptions on my part, right? But I think source is probably one that's weights a little bit heavier on paper. I think more and more folks, especially from like regulatory doc perspective, are not on paper anymore. I think that was a lower hanging fruit to move.
I mean, I think reg should be electronic.
Correct.
Period. I believe that might as well be electronic 100%.
So I think like depending on what stats people are quoting is going to depend on like, oh, well, most people are on paper, no one's on paper. It's like, well, are we talking about regulatory documents? Are we talking about source? Are we talking about your budgets and your calendars, right?
Well, I think I would say have a CTMS, but your source can be electronic or your source can be paper. Anyways, I agree with Jonathan's, the correct question should be what's the lightest operating model that works for this study, these sites, and this sponsor. The problem is that's different for every study we see potentially. And the one thing I don't want to do is operate across 3 different models within my own site to say, or sites that I manage to say, well, this one's going to do paper on this study, but full eSource on the next one, and then like a hybrid on the third. And then you've got complete lack of consistency, when it gets to a study by study basis.
That's already the problem with sponsor provided tech, let alone your own operational tech.
Well, I think that's what sites want is some consistency, and it's hard to find given all the other things, but it at least gives sites the illusion they have control over something. Right? We control this, so we're going to do it this way all the time. Now, again, maybe this is just me, but like, again, try to create some consistency. Maybe not. Maybe that's dumb. Maybe we just need to look at it on a study by study basis. And frankly, for us, again, your model could be affected by these choices in so many ways. We work with a number of practicing physicians. Some are at retirement age, some are very young, some are very good with technology, some want to use paper, some won't check their email no matter what you do. And so you have to sometimes use that as a strategic way too. Like if I got a doc who I know, they answer their texts, they answer their emails, great. They're great to use electronically. We have some doctors who are, they're getting up there into their late 70s, they're great doctors, but maybe never really, changed with the times before. Like they'd rather have a piece of paper in front of them. It's easier to track them down and get them to sign where the little sticky note is. But again, it's challenging to manage that much variation in an industry that's already lacks any consistency whatsoever.
Well, and that's a huge challenge across, in different models too, especially as you grow in like large academics. Like that's one of the hardest things I'll talk to my team about is like when you're selling software into these large organizations, like the product, if you have a CTMS, ostensibly, like if you're doing it right, you have the core functionality. The hardest part is the change management. And it's because of that, especially if you have groups who don't have a centralized or consistent way. Not only are you trying to get folks into a software system, but you're fundamentally changing how they work because now you're trying to standardize across departments and different doctors who all have different ways. I mean, this was a huge challenge way back in the day when I worked at Epic, right? And we would implement, and people hated it. Like the change management was and working with physicians specifically, it was a huge challenge because they're like, I don't want to do it that way. And it's like, well, your health system is doing this, so we're going to do this. And
Right.
you're a young 20-something-year-old and you're being like, sorry, I know you went to med school and you're curing all these diseases, but I'm forcing this on you. It was really challenging. And it was that change. It was people didn't want to do it a new way. They wanted to do it how they used to.
Yeah. And look, I don't, and again, I think people misinterpret, like, I don't care about doing it one way or the other because I have some kind of preference. It's more
Consistency.
well, not even that, but I hope what people take away from the post was that give me interoperability. I think sites should be paid a premium who are able to use it in a way that's useful, because it should be useful for sponsors. And again, if you're coming on site and not utilizing remote monitoring, then again, that takes away another advantage that we would be providing to the sponsor. And then there was the third one. Pay the premium for it. You know what? I can save you monitor visits. I can save you all this stuff. So, move some of that money over here to help me build it and maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, if it's so much better data quality, like that should be of value to you as a sponsor. Yeah. And you could potentially have access to all the data in real time. Don't even need monitor visits. Technically, you can monitor it whenever you want. Again, I think there's a premium price that comes with that because you don't want a monitor visit that lasts forever and ever. So without interoperability, without a business model that's actually useful to sites, and without sponsors taking advantage of the fact that like we're using these systems, it is pointless. And again, you'll hear stories across all kinds of different. Some people are like, well, everybody's remote monitoring now. Well, no, they're not. They're on my site. Every week they're at my site.
Yeah.
And we're saying, oh, we have it remotely. Why don't you log in from your hotel or wherever? You don't need to be here to do this. So, or people are saying, oh no, sponsors are paying for everything. No, they're not. We negotiate budgets with the biggest and smallest companies that there are. Almost no one is saying straight up, like, we're going to make sure all of your costs are offset, including all the extra work you did to build it out. Like, it just doesn't, it's not happening. So, or I'm just bad at research. I need to quit and get a job at Wendy's. So I don't know. That was my real point, was like, once it actually makes sense more broadly for the industry, it's a no-brainer. But this kind of goes back to something else I mentioned, in that sites can care a whole lot, vendors can care a whole lot. It's not going to matter until sponsors force the issue or reward sites who are more efficient and more transparent and have higher data quality. I got into like a conversation with a guy with like, well, sponsors want you to, I'm like, sponsors don't care. They want patients and data. They don't care how you get it to them. Until that changes, it just makes more sense for sites to do it as cheaply and easily as possible.
Yeah.
If those other things change, great. Makes perfect sense. And everyone should be 100% electronic. But no sponsor has come to me and said, oh, you're not electronic? Yeah, we're not going to work with you.
Yeah.
Never happened. Now, some of them don't like paper. And even there's comments in that thread of CRAs who are like, oh, I prefer paper. I prefer paper. Okay, then who wants electronic? Vendors.
Well, vendors wouldn't exist if there wasn't a want for it.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
nothing useless has ever existed.
Well, no, but I'm saying, like, if there wasn't a market, the vendor wouldn't be there.
Of course.
Like, we didn't decide to be like, hey, I want this. Guess why? Like, you guys should all have this. Like, there was a need, there was a desire. That's where these spin up. Where I keep thinking about, though, is that, like, is it the sponsor, or does there need to be another element here that provides consistency and like carrot stick? Because like we've been sitting here, like, I think you're right. It's not the vendors, it's not the sites, it's the sponsors have to drive it, to your like point with the business model and actually leveraging the technologies. But like, what's going to force them to do that? Is there anything? And that also is determining that like these are holistic entities that operate seamlessly and collaboratively.
Well, and I think it needs to be an apparent, not just apparent, it needs to be like provide actual legitimate improvement. So I was thinking about this too, and I started thinking about, the move to EHR from paper, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
first thing I did though is I was like, well, what actual advantage did that provide? Did it provide better patient outcomes? Um, is there actually more interoperability? We still hear huge problems about people getting all of their data. From what I've read, there's no real, again, someone I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, but like on a cursory search, it didn't improve patient outcomes. One of the big advantages is that potentially it can more easily spot like medication errors and things like that. But like, did our, you know, uh, mortality and morbidity get better because we went electronic? And if not, then all it really probably did was make billing easier, which is also, fine for some people. But like, what did we really improve?
Um,
You hear about physician burnout with these. Again, it's a lot of downsides. I'm just curious. And again, I'm burying the lead. I know, again, I'm being a little purposefully obtuse
yeah.
here, but like, did we make medicine better?
I think there's a lot of parallel things that happened also in medicine, in insurance, in care delivery, alongside the rollout of EHRs. So it'd be
Do you
hard
think
to
that was
point.
alongside, or do you think there was maybe some connection there?
I mean, I'm not completely naive. Of course, there's going to be a connection.
Fair.
um,
So that's
but
what I don't want to see is that happen, and it really doesn't actually improve life, especially for sites. I mean, it may improve it for
so I don't know.
sponsors or regulatory bodies, but like, will it actually help us get our jobs done better, like across the board?
You're cutting out pretty bad.
Yeah, you're cutting out too.
Um, I don't think it's all, and I know you know this, but it's not like all pessimistic. Like I'm thinking about like I'm registering my kid for school, and I have to go in and get like their records, and like all of that I can do by just like putting in their birthday and pulling all of their immunization records down. Or like I can go in and like for me as a patient, I have more access to what happened during my care. I can check it
Fair.
out. Or if I move between, like had to take my son to the emergency room this summer, right? Like or like last fall. Like that was not here in Madison, but I still have access to those records, and those records can come back to his primary care, his pediatrician, right?
Sure.
So it's like that flow would not have been. Yes, it could have happened where there's a fax, the records faxed over through it, but
No,
like
I get it.
in what
Yeah.
purpose, right? So I think
Right.
is like continuity and continuation of care. Yes, there's interoperability challenges. There always will be, but there are also federal regulations that require it, right? So like,
Yeah, but that's my point is of why. Yeah, of course, there are federal regulations, but how much has that
it absolutely
influence of the federal regulations actually made a better?
they have to. I mean, like they have to share data, right? Like it's like yes, there's challenges with it. There always will be, but like
Sure.
it happens, right? And like everyone's going to talk about how there's problems, but like if they didn't have that, there would be no impetus for Epic and Cerner to exchange data.
Yeah,
They
I
would
mean,
have,
that is fair.
and they
That
would
is
have no
fair.
standard on even how to do it.
It'd be
Epic,
worse.
this is how we do it. Cerner says this is how we do it,
Yeah, yeah.
and then you're fucked, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
you can't talk. So like it could always be better, but it certainly could be worse. And I do
Yeah,
think
okay.
like continuity of care across emergent, urgent care, primary care specialists, just to make that more streamlined, to see like where like this doctor prescribed this prescribed this. Like I mean, we go in, like I had a friend who had a couple procedures done, right? Like I just think it works where it's like there's like we went back and looked, and I was like, oh, I think I found something here because I was able to access it. So I there is benefit. Now, what ultimately drove it over the line and why we accepted it broadly as a in our country is probably financial.
Fair. All right. Why isn't my stuff working?
Shut the
Fuck
fuck
you.
up, Dan.
All right. Anyways, we were well over our time. I did want to talk about Walgreens a little bit. Maybe we'll leave it for next time, but there is a nice little think piece by Dan Shell. I'll post it on here. You guys should check it out, but maybe we'll talk more about that on Tuesday.
Let's do it.
Sweet. Anything else?
No.
Cool. And we'll check you guys Tuesday.
That's a wrap.
Later. Thanks for listening to Note to File. We're committed to continuing to bring you independent and unfiltered coverage of the clinical trial industry.
We want to talk about what you want to hear. So if you have something on your mind, hit us up at notetofilepodcast.com.